this video, you're going to see how to prep a bookshelf for a 3M Noc install. Prep is extremely important for Noc installations. And what I loved about the end result is the wood looks super exotic and expensive, but the actual wood used during this process is MDF, or medium density fiberboard, so the material costs are actually quite low. So once you understand how to put on Noc, this is a great upsell for, let's say, architects or people doing construction, because then they can upsell it to their clients as well, and this can create a really good revenue stream. What's very important at the beginning of the process is to choose the right Noc finish. So in this case, this is for my house, and my wife and I were choosing the floor. She wanted the bookshelves to match the floor, so I brought the 3M Noc book to the store and took out the samples and put it on the samples at the store of the floor, and found one that matched perfectly and had little specks of gold, which is an added bonus. Here's a shot of the wood being moved into the house, so these boards are actually going to cut on location. So once they're in, here's a shot of the MDF board. So very, very solid, but very low cost in terms of material costs, which is great stuff. Now we get to cutting the boards, and this is an extremely important part of the process, is to make sure you get the right measurements. 3M Noc film measures around 122 centimeters wide. So when I asked Olaf to cut the boards, he cut these 27 centimeters wide. So because I'm wrapping these in one piece, that takes into account the size of the boards. So in terms of material costs, I save it. He made them wider than, let's say, 30 centimeters or let's say 12 inches. Then I would have to use a lot more Noc material. So very important to get the right measurements there. Once the boards are cut, it's all about prep. Now the top has a coating, so I don't have to prep the top, but it's the sides that are just raw wood. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting on a wood primer. Very important to put on the wood primer, let this dry, and I'm using a water-based wood primer because it dries very quickly. Very important to choose the right one. If you choose an oil-based, they can take up to 24 hours to dry, and that could really slow down the prep process. So once I have all the sides done, at first coating, very important to go back and sand those down, because sometimes when Olaf was cutting, even though he used a really good saw, is it just makes it a little bit of a raw edge. You want a good flat high energy surface to create. So once I get the sanding paper, this is 240, I want to sand the edges. So now obviously creating a lot of dust and dirt, but once I get all the edges sanded, very important to go back and use a second coating of wood primer there. But just be super thorough here. Obviously working in a construction zone, so oftentimes with Noc installs, if you're trying to do them both in the same day, get the boards and the boards wrapped, you want to do those in two separate locations. But once the sides are primered again, they're all perfect and ready to go. Now ready to wrap, so it's about cleaning the work environment. So I vacuumed, now I'm going to mop, and so this is in the middle of the construction renovation process, so not going to get it perfectly clean, but enough to get the dirt down. With the workspace prepped, it's now time to cut the Noc. So I want to make sure there's just enough on the sides. The trick about Noc is not just just doing random cuts and just having tons of excess material. You want to be pretty precise. That helps lower material costs, but also makes the install much easier. So once I make all the measurements, you want to be very precise and label them. Extremely important. You can sometimes hand this to the production department. In this case, this is such a big job, I would almost even throw this on a plotter to cut. This would be much easier and straightforward. So you give the numbers, put it in the plotter, load the Noc material in, and that'll cut it all for you. So a really good tip to do that on large jobs. So being super thorough on certain panels, some were bigger than the others, so I'm going to have a little bit of excess material here. So once I make sure I have all those set up, I want to bring the panels and prep them. Now, this is a really good tip in terms of the prep process for Noc installation when you apply primer 94 on the edges, that can take up to 5 minutes to dry. So what I want to do here is prep some panels, put the primer on, and while the primer is drying, I'm going to cut the Noc film. Lots of different containers for 3M Primer 94. You have those little break-off capsules, you got the can, in this case you got the dopper. So I'm going to put this on the edge, and this fits perfectly. You want to do a 360 and just do the edges. You don't have to do the main flat surface because that has a high surface energy. But for these edges, and this is a permanent install, very important to just put the Primer 94 on there. Nice, even, thin coating. More is not necessarily better here, just very thorough. Make sure all four sides are completely covered, then I switch to the next panel. Notice I have the panels slightly off the table so they can dry nice and clean and even. Now I'm ready to cut the Noc. I'm going to have this table set up. It's actually a table for wallpaper that I put some extensions on. I'm going to roll the panel out and make sure it's super clean so it doesn't scratch. Always make sure the liner faces up because you can use this as your cutting grid. And here I'm just using a vacuum paper slitter, just going right along the line and trying to keep those panels straight. It's all about being precise, especially on objects like this where you don't want that excess material. So I cut it vertically right there, so that separates it. Now I'm going to cut it right in the middle. So exactly 30 centimeters here, or let's say 24 inches. Once I cut it there, I roll it up and label it. So you can do cut all the panels, and this time I'm going to work in stages. Do 3 panels, cut the die note, wrap 3 panels, cut the die note, so just have a nice steady workflow here. And for the horizontal panels, I'm wrapping those in one piece, and that's why I cut the die note material that way. But here on the vertical panels, these are the ones I'm going to wrap in stages, because when Olaf builds the bookshelf, he's going to have to drill through the sides to anchor the horizontal panels. So I'm going to wrap the inside portion first. Then Olaf is going to put the bookshelf together. I'm going to fill in the areas where he put the screws in, and then I'm going to wrap over that. If I did that in one piece first and he drills through it, the screws are going to be exposed. I'm going to have to redo those panels. Very expensive and costly, so always plan ahead with Dynoc. And now that the boards are prepped, the Dynoc is prepped, it's time to wrap. So notice I'm switching the boards to a different table. This one has tacky rubber on the surface, so that really helps secure the board in place. Bring the Dynoc over, wipe it, ready to rock and roll. So you can see there's really a lot of prep involved to get it ready for the Dynoc installation, which is the next video, but it's well worth it, as you'll see. Thanks for watching. Justin Pate. So now that the bookshelves are prepped and ready to rock, we're going to wrap this in one piece. So wrap all sides right now. Show different styles of wrapping bookshelves, because you're not going to wrap all of them completely all sides in one piece. You're going to mix and match based on where the panels go and where they face. Very important to just help streamline the process. Do a zipper cut on the back, try to keep that liner on. And I'm cutting it on the top side that I'm going to begin with. Doing the long horizontal panels, trying to keep those tables super clean. Dirt is your enemy right here. Once I get it fit top to bottom, I'm going to cut it right on the back. I want to make sure it folds down so I have enough left, right, top to bottom. I'm going to anchor it right there at the top. Once it's in the right position, I can pull out that zipper line, and this is going to be my permanent hinge. Always start in the middle and squeegee right and left. So lock it in, squeegee right. If it starts to see some wrinkles, pick it up just nice and even, don't let it tack. And always keep in mind with Dynoc, it's a one-shot deal. I'm going to put this on, if I get in the wrong spot and pick it back up, it's going to pick up parts of the planks, and I'm going to have to redo the planks and do another piece of Dynoc. So it's very important to be slow and steady right here when you're setting up Dynoc. And if you get it set up right, it really flows. If you don't, you're going to be fighting the whole time, and it can be really, really frustrating. So once I get this top piece on, left to right, squeegee, just working really even squeegee strokes, left to right. I'm going to cut it flush to the top here. No need to wrap around the back side here. I'm going to come back later and fold that over from when I wrap the other side. So I'm cutting it with a 90-degree angle. Very important to get the angle right if you're going to do a overlap right there, which we'll show later. So it's all about cutting angles on corners. 90 degrees for there. I'm going to fold the panel over just a little bit. All about cleaning right now. Take the tack cloth, left, right. Once the surface is clean, then release the liner just a little bit. Don't go cowboy. Pull the backing paper off about 6 inches. Squeegee left to right, keep it nice and even. Notice I'm keeping the panel a little higher than normal than, let's say, if I'm doing like say boards or a car wrap. Keep it about 30 degrees up. Really don't want that to touch the surface. Once I get it to the edge, I'm going to have just enough of the backing paper on so it protects it from, like, once it falls down, it's not going to, if it touches the table, it's not going to stick to the table. That backing paper is really protecting it right there. Now it's all about getting the corner right. Very, very important. Here's the steps to do it. I run a finger on the top edge there. This just slightly gets it around the corner. Then I pinch it. So I have 2 fingers, my thumb and my index finger right there, and I pinch it really tight to the corner. Once it's pinched to the corner, then I can use my squeegee to relax it to the next edge. If you use your squeegee there the entire time, then it's going to kind of buckle on the corner. Very important to get a super tight edge on that corner. Once I get it to the next corner and I have it set up, I can pull the panel up vertical and set up the next corner just like I did what you saw at the top one. Now I run my finger exactly the same. So this takes time, slow and steady, nice even patience right here. So don't want to rush this process because those corners are really critical to get right. You have to think of that Dynoc is a multi-layered film. It's 8 millimeters thick. Those corners have to be tight. This particular wood film, and every type of Dynoc finish is different. This particular wood grain film is really easy to work with. It's not as stiff as, let's say, advanced metallic films or gloss films. So it does take that corner quite well. It's a very easy Dynoc film to work with. And I get that corner set up and I can squeegee it around, just squeegeeing about a ½ inch, just not getting greedy right here, just getting the panel going left to right. You really want to make sure that the panel flows evenly on all the sides. If it starts to kink and go in the wrong direction, it can really fold on itself and create big problems. So just keeping the panels even, Squeegee left to right, keeping a 45-degree on there, keeping a nice thin buffer. Take the tack cloth, wipe it down. If you notice though, what can happen with Dino film, and I'm doing a lot of these on the videos this year for the Wrap Institute, is I'm skipping a step. So you'll see that in a second, I'll come back to it. Is now I'm squeegeeing back and forth, pulling the backing paper nice and even and steady. Squeegee left, squeegee right, 45 degrees. Once I get it to the edge, and you can see that's just nice strokes right there, is hanging right there, but I want to go back to that first stage. When I did the first half of this top panel, I didn't do the tack cloth, and this is the result. Little specks of dust get under there because it's so thick. Look how terrible that looks. So really keep that in mind. You skip one step during a process, particularly with Dino film, and you're really going to pay a price because of the thickness of it. So once we get to the edges now, we're going to cut the edges cold. The reason why I'm cutting the edges cold at the top is I'm going to overlap them down on the side, showing different types of styles for this bookshelf. So this one's going to be full coverage. Others might cut these flush because they're going next to the planks. So make 45-degree cuts away, because that bottom piece now that I'm working on right there is going to fold over onto the piece that I just cut away. So you're going to have like a butt joint there, almost like a butt joint, but a sanded joint. So once I get the material worked around there, I'm going to set it up properly. So really trying to get these corners right figured out is extremely important with Dino material. So I'm going to fold it over here, and this particular side, I'm just going to cut it away, and I'm going to cut it right there at the top with a nice good clean cut. Fold it over, have almost just a standard overlap triangle on the side, because this is going to touch back again the corner. What I'm doing is I'm going for full coverage here, and I don't want any speck of the white showing from the sides when the bookshelf is put together, which is the reason why I'm wrapping the sides here. But I don't have to do a crazy, like I say, a butt seam on those sides, because they're going to be right against the vertical planks. Now I get the sides set up here on the edges. I'm going to set it up here. You can see the triangle on the side, fold it over. Now I'm set. Same thing on the other side. Fold over the triangle, that faces in. So no need to cut those out. Those triangles are perfect because no one's going to see them. Now I flip the panel over, and now I want to cut those sides. So right now, earlier I cut the first sides at a 90-degree angle. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to sand them down at a 45 angle, the piece that's going on top. So I set up the edges right here, run my finger so everything's set up, and I'm going to use 240 grit sandpaper right here. Set it in. You always try to use a fresh piece when I'm using these particular cuts. Don't want to use a worn down one because it's really hard to judge the depth of the sand. And I'm just going to rock it back and forth. And how you judge if you cut deep enough is that panel sticking up right there. You can see it kind of sticking up at a 45-degree angle. But as you sand, and once you hit the right spot, it really just almost sits down flat, so it relaxes. And that tells you that you're working through the top layers, because Dino has 4 layers. And what you want to do right now is you're basically sanding through the first 2, maybe 3. And when you get to that bottom layer, you're going to work the bottom layer away, but because you have that piece underneath that you initially wrapped at that, and you cut at a 90-degree angle, then it's going to look like wood. So you're basically just sanding off the top layer right here and just really paying attention, and you'll sometimes see a white line from where you sanded, really thin white line, and that tells you that you hit the right depth. So look for 2 things, white line and the material relaxing. So once you hit the right point, now the material just simply pops off. Just make sure you get 100% of it, and then it just slides right off nice and even. And sometimes it'll look white, but it's actually not white because you went too far. It's white because it's the adhesive that's left over, so it's that bottom layer. So once you get that bottom layer off, you just be nice and easy, super light, quick, but always try to keep your sander block at a 45-degree angle. If you keep it too flat, it's going to scratch the surface that you just wrapped. So very important to get the right angle. So again, do the main long piece. Now I'm doing the sides. Very easy and straightforward. Pull that piece, finish it off, wipe it down. So that's a full coverage plank right now. So this is a lot of work involved in this particular style. And if you do have a slight white edge, you always can use a Sharpie now to make that black. So you always want to have different colored Sharpies on hand for different types of Dino colors that you're using. Once that plank is prepped, now you get ready for the next one, because you're sanding, lots of dirt builds up there, so make sure you clean the area where you're wrapping. Once the area is clean and ready to go, in this case, I'm going to do a different style of cut right here. Once I get to the corner, have it all set up, I'm going to run my finger, make a 45-degree cut in here, make another 45-degree cut in right there. And so for this particular plank, instead of wrapping it full coverage, I'm just literally just going to cut it flush to the side. So this saves a tremendous amount of time during the install. So you can always mix and match your planks based on where you think the visual is going to be. Very smart not to overwrap with Dino and just wrap enough. So right here, just for these type of planks, we're going to cut them right flush to the side. No need to do overlaps, no need to wrap any farther, no need to do sanding edges. Very important just to kind of flush, keep the angle of the blade almost slightly beveled in, so about almost like a 30 degrees into the side. You can see how it just cuts enough film where it cuts super flush, and then the end result is this, but once it's put onto the planks, or the vertical planks, and the bookshelf is made, you're not going to see this white. But even still, it's always good to sand these edges nice and clean, make sure it's down nice and flat. Any type of dino edge that's kind of sticking straight over an edge can be picked up, and even when Olaf is putting the bookshelves together, might catch an edge and pull, so you always want to make sure those are sanded down nice and smooth. Now these are the vertical panels that I talked about earlier, where I'm going to wrap these in two pieces. Now the horizontal wrapped in one, this one in two sections. So I set it up, make sure it's even top to bottom, but because this is such a long piece, instead of squeegeeing left to right, in this case I'm going to squeegee from the top down. So I make a zipper cut at the top, double check that it fits left and right, and not only that it fits left and right, but then make sure that the grain pattern is going straight. Pull that little zipper, lock it into the top, pull the backing paper, and this is just a long, even, steady shot. So what's great about Dino is once you get it prepped, it does feel like you're going downhill as long as you don't skip steps. So I cleaned it, put the tack cloth on it, going to pull the backing paper just in even increments right now. My free hand is making sure that it goes in the same direction. Backing paper, make sure that it stays away. If I do get little bubbles right there, that's what's great about the adhesive with Dino film, is it has comply features. So I simply just go back later and press that with my finger and it disappears, or if I need to, use an air release tool. So once I'm squeegeeing nice and even and steady, I'm going to cold cut the side. So I wrapped around the edge right there, and on the bottoms of this plank right now, I'm cutting it flush right to the side with a 90-degree cut, because when Olaf puts the bookshelf together and he drills his holes, I'm going to go back later and wrap it and do a sanded butt joint on the side. So prepping for later, and for the top and bottom, because the bottom of the plank is touching the floor and the top of the plank is at the ceiling, there's no need to wrap around these edges. So this makes it very, very clean, straightforward install. And this is something very important to understand about Dino installations, as it streamlines the installation process, sometimes even saves a lot of material, and really increases profits. Very important not to overwrap right here. Now that all the planks are done, it doesn't mean that it can be installed, because this is midpoint through the renovation. So these planks really have to be kept in a safe spot so they don't get damaged. Very, very important to do that, and that's something you have to think about often with Dino installations during the construction or renovation. Now that the planks are ready to be installed, here's a good shot of Olaf prepping the wall, drills his holes. Here's the anchors that are being fastened in. Always make sure you get the right fasteners that have the right width for the wood that you're using. Then once those fasteners in, simply slide the horizontal planks in. Very straightforward. Once he slides those in, make sure you get the right measurements. Those have a screw at the bottom, so it just really locks in, super solid. Then the vertical plank goes in. So here it's wood, but on the opposite side it's white. This is the reason why I didn't wrap it before. So the horizontal, wrap full. And here's a shot of Olaf. There's a side molding on the floor, so the plank didn't quite fit, but you can see that you can even saw through Dino once it's on the boards. Really good stuff, fits in there like a puzzle piece. And you can see the side that has the wood goes on to the horizontal planks. The side that doesn't have the wood is exposed. He drills through there. Then I have to go back and fill this. And this is something you really have to think about Dino now too, is once I put the filler in, have to wait for it to dry about an hour, go sand it down, put some more filler in there, wait for it to dry. Then I have to wrap it. So this is something that you really have to think about in terms of scheduling sometimes for Dino, is you have to work in stages. So really think about that in terms of scheduling long-term plans, because if your installer has to wait, that can really be a drain on profits. And I'm actually doing the install piece on the back side with the books on the shelf. That's really nice, so just really streamlining the process there. And here's a shot of the other side of the bookshelf. Really cool stuff. Looks like super expensive wood, but we all know that it was done with MDF boards, so low cost in terms of material and spectacular results. And now for the wrap-up. Prep time was 4 hours, install time 3 hours, very straightforward. Assembly was 1 hour. Total material used, 13 yards, or around 11.5 meters. The Dino material used was fine wood, 1768. Hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Justin Pitt.